streaming on my YouTube, so I'm just bringing that up. Okay, so I think it's live. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so let's go back to good. Hmm, what if it's still live? Right? It's still live. Sure. Hey, come on, did it stop? Hold on. I'm just trying to make sure. Sorry, I just want to make sure the whole thing's working. Hold on. All right, so I think we're still on. Okay, I think so. All right. All right. So we're gonna start the class in a second. I'm just trying to figure out all this technology stuff. It's like so much going on right now. Okay. So this is where we're at. Okay, so we're gonna start. Are you guys okay with that? Are you guys okay with starting? You guys there?
Yes, yes, we are to
Oh,
go.
okay, cool. All right, so we'll just go, and then whoever joins in, joins in. Okay. So yeah, so we're gonna go very high level in 1 second. Okay, hold on. Here's this screen start. Okay, hold on. All right, perfect. Hold on. 71. Okay, perfect. Okay, so perfect timing. We're gonna start the Shiur. Okay, so this is the thing. So we wanted to do the Shiur like we wanted to do this Shiur like uh, hold on, I gotta add all the new people coming in. Hold on. It's so much like management right now. Hold on. Yeah, hold on. I gotta add whoever just came in. Hold on. Okay, so hold on. I just want to make sure somebody just came in. Okay, one, two, three, four. But I think someone else tried to get in. Hold on, let me try to see. I don't know. It's like so much technology. I'm like going crazy. Okay, so all right, we'll just keep going. Okay, so this is the thing. So we wanted to do this year. Um, we wanted to do this year a day ago because it was Rachel Ameinu's yard site, right? Her death anniversary, and we wanted to do it because of that, right? But for whatever reason, there was like different communication issues. Whatever, we weren't able to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to we're going to learn we're going to learn the same concept, but we're going to expand it a little bit. And so the thing is like this. So there's a situation in this week's Torah portion that connects directly to what we're going to talk about today, right? And I'm trying to bring it up right now. So in this week's Torah portion, it goes like this, right? Hold on. Okay, so this week's Torah portion, as maybe you guys have already kind of learned a little bit, this is after Abraham has a circumcision. He already has a circumcision. He is becoming this new person, and he's talking to God, right? So he's talking to God, and as he's talking to God, these three individuals come to his door, and these three individuals, Rashi tells us that these three individuals are men, right? These three individuals are men, right? And he says not only are they men, they're not just regular men, they're angels, right? So this is what Rashi says, right? And so these people, they come, they talk, they have this whole conversation, this, whatever, right? You see it happening. Abraham gets excited. You know, he tells his wife, they go out, they're baking cakes, they're getting food, the whole thing, they're running around. And so it gets to this point where when they're eating, the angels ask Abraham, they ask him a question. They says, Ve'amru alav azeh Sarah ishta'echa, right? So it says, where is your wife? Where is your wife? And Abraham responds to him. He says, you know, she's in the tent. Ve ohel, right? She's in the vehine ve ohel, right? She's in the tent, right? That's what he says. But this is the key point. This is the point that I want to bring up. So it says Ve'amar Shov ashuv alecha kaet haya vehine vin, right? So what's going on here? So now, then one of the angels says, I will return next year, and your wife Sarah will have a son. So now, not only is he, I mean, most people, when they think about this idea, it's a huge revelation, right? It's like, wait, Sarah's going to have a kid? Wow, huge, right? But that's not the point that I want to focus on. What I want to focus on is what Rashi says, right? And Rashi says like this. He focuses on the word that says, ka'et chaya, right? And he says, chayet hayat means at this time next year, it will be Pesach. And on Pesach, Isaac was born. And so he says in the asterisk, he says, well, when you read it, do not read it as ka'et, at a time, but rather ka'at, at this time, right? And so he says, so at this time. So basically, so you have Avraham Avinu, right? And we got to understand what the situation is with Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu is coming from a family of total idol worshiping. They're totally disconnected. They're not connected to anything. Abraham Avinu's born. We learned this last week, right? We learned it last week. We saw the conditions that Abraham Avinu came into the world in. It was pure. Everyone believed in the idols. They believed in the expressions of what they thought God was. They forgot about God's name. It was complete darkness in terms of understanding what the true source of all creation, what it is. They were totally focused on just the attributes, right? And so Abraham Avinu comes in this world and he just has a natural inclination to say, hey, you know what? This whole situation is fake. It's false, right? And so we connect to that. We connect to that unique soul that Abraham Avinu had, and that unique soul basically said, hey, you know what? The world that believes in the attributes of God is fake. And I believe in the world where God is the source and the attributes are just an expression, right? So I don't believe in the sun god and the moon god and the cow god and all these other gods that they come up with and say, no, I want to go straight to the source where everything is unified, right? So this is Abraham Avinu. So Abraham Avinu grows, and so there's another issue, right? And so to understand this other issue, we have to go back to the beginning of creation, when it says, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim va'aretz. When God creates the world from the beginning, what does he say? We got to keep going. We got to look at this because this is like big stuff, right? Hold on. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect what the angels tell Avraham Avinu. We're going to connect what they tell Avraham Avinu to the beginning of the Torah, right? So how do we do that, right? Hold on. And so we got to keep going. And then let's see. Well, hold on. Wait, fifth day. Hold on. We got to go back. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So it says like this. For verse 16 says, this is the beginning of creation, right? This is the beginning of creation, and God says, Vayomer Elohim Yehi, or it says, Ve'ahi merot be'rekia hashemayim lehavdil bin hayom uven leila laila ve'havu leot, right? So it says ule moadim ule manim, right? You remember saying this during when we say kiddush on the holidays, right? We say this veshani, right? So it says like this. So it says, God said, let the light in the sky be separate from the night, right? He separated that. And he says, and they will serve as signs and set times and days and years, right? That's what it's going to be, right? And so at this point, this is where God creates this system of the sun and the moon. It says right here, Ve'as Elohim et shenei hamerod hadolim Hagadolim Ed Ha Maor. So it says Hagadol. So he says, and God made the two lights. One, well, he made two great lights, one greater and dominant by day, and one lesser by night, right? And then in the stars and all. So this whole system that we hear right here in the beginning of creation is what we now know as a calendar system. Because the way that God understood the stars and the moons and everything that exists is different than how the world that doesn't believe in God understand the stars and the moons, right? So when you hear all the way back to Abraham, and you hear about Abraham, and you hear about Abraham saying to when you hear about the angels telling Abraham and saying to him, the angels come to him and they say, hold on. Yeah, the angels come to him and they say, when the angels come to him and they say that we will come back this time next year, and Rashi tells you that they're saying that because it's on Pesach. This whole system of how to understand time goes all the way back to the beginning of creation, but this is where Abraham is understanding it at. Abraham is getting this understanding of time and the holiness of this time being introduced to the fact that he's going to have a son, right? And so why is this idea important, right? It's important because we're trying to understand this system that we just had, which is a yard site, right? We just had a yard site. We just had a time where a person passes away. And for some reason in the Jewish world, it's a big story, right? It's a big story. Everyone's into it. Everyone's excited about it. It's a woman. She passed away. Her name is Rachel Amenu. But what's the connection? What's going on? How can we understand this? Right? And not only that, when the angels come to Abraham in this story that we're learning right now, they don't talk to him about the details of how things are going to manifest. They talk to him about the manifestation of the greatness of his destiny in the future past his physical life. When they come to him, when the Shem comes to him in Lech Lecha, right? Hashem comes to him in Lech Lecha and says, he says in Lech Lecha, he brings it up, he says, Vayomer Adonai El Avram Lech Lecha. So he says, God says to Abraham, Lech Lecha. He says, Lech Lecha, Lech, go, Lech Lecha, to yourself, right? And he says, Me Arse Echa, go, he says, and from the land. And it says, Umi Moladetecha, and from your generation, your peers, all the people you know, all your friends. Umi be avi echa al haaretz asher aretz echa, and he says, from here, he says, leave your father's house, and I'm going to show you a new land, a new reality, a new world, right? This is what God tells to Abraham, right? And so what we're doing is what we're connecting this idea of Abraham and his uniqueness to our uniqueness, right? Because many of us, it's not to say that we have to physically move, right? It's not so much about that, but it's the idea of understanding that everything that we learned is a limitation as it relates to the direction and what Hashem has planned for us, right? Because we may have a plan for us that no one in our community, no one in our neighborhood, no one in our country understands, right? And so that's the idea of what we're getting to understand by Abraham, right? But we're going to even more details right now, right? Because we're saying this building process, right? This building process that we see right now that's happening with Abraham, that's the same building process that we could see that we can see in the book of Exodus, right? right? In the book of Exodus, it talks about this idea of it talks about this idea of of this new calendar, right? The Jewish people are leaving slavery, right? They're leaving slavery, and all of a sudden now they now they learn about this new uh um they learn about this new calendar, right, and I'm trying to bring it up right now. And so because we got to read it inside, because we're building someone really great, because what I'm going to say and share is very high level, and we have to have a building ground to understand it, right? We have to have a building ground to understand it. So hold on. So let's see, Parsha Bo. Hold on, you guys are walking it through with me. Whoa. Okay. Nope, that's not Bo. That's not Bo. Wow. Well, okay. So that didn't work out. Okay, so anyways, so the thing is like this. In the Torah, when the Jewish people are leaving Egypt, okay, the first blessing that God gives to the Jewish people is the counting of the new moon, right? That's the first mitzvah. He says out of everything, not Shabbat, not honoring thy parents, none of this stuff. The first thing that he says is in his whole conversation is he's saying, you know what, you have to you have to you have to you have to leave. Wait, we're gonna bring it up right now. Hold on. Parsha boat right here. Okay, so here we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it right here. So the Jewish people are leaving, and let's keep in mind what's going on, right? The Jewish people are leaving, Jewish people come into Egypt. They have a culture, they have a tradition, they have all these things going on. It's very similar to the Igbo situation, right? So you have the Igbo people, right? And their tribe, they're living, for hundreds, thousands of years. And then the British come along and they create the state, right? And so all of a sudden now the Igbos are now part of the state, a part of all these other different people. And so now they're trying to maintain, right? They're trying to maintain this idea of um of their national identity, right? And so now they're in this new reality, and so they're intermixing, they're connecting, they're part of this whole thing. And so now they they come into this new thing. And so now they are dealing with this issue where now they're dealing with all these different people, different tribes, different cultures. And so over time they start to assimilate, right? And this new assimilation that they have. Hold on, I got to stop the thing because someone else just came in. Okay. Okay, cool. So now you have the Jewish people, and they're assimilating into this new reality going into Egypt, right? And so this new reality that they're going into in Egypt is a new reality where now they're assimilating. They're losing their ways. They're not as connected as they used to be, right? And so now they have this issue of, well, who are we now? Right? Who are we now? Now that you know, now that we're in this new reality, and God is telling us that, like, you know, we're in this new reality. We're living in a new, we're living in a city, and now we have all these neighbors, we have these people around us, and we're losing our way, right? And we're not the same people that we were when we were alone and we were traveling and we were doing our own thing. But now we're mixed with all these other people, and generation after generation after generation, God says, generation after generation, God says, you know what? Um, you know, Generation after generation, God says, He says, you know what? Well, the thing is that you have to. I'm trying to find this parsha. I'm sorry, I apologize. It's just so annoying. Hold on. I'm trying to find the exact parsha. Where's the parsha? It's not Mishpatim. Is it Mishpatim? I don't think it's Mishpatim. Hold on. No, that's not it. It's not Mishpatim. Is it Bo? Anyways, so the point is, this is the point. The point that I'm saying is the first thing that God gives to the people who went lower and lower and lower and lower and lower. He gave them the blessing of the moon. The same thing we see by Abraham when he now is being approached by the angels. And it's this new beginning of his life of holiness and Kedusha. The first thing he gets is the angels giving him a time system. So it's the same exact mechanism, right? And so that's the point that we're trying to get to, is to understand that there's this consistent theme that when the Jewish people get on the right path, right, the first thing that they addressed is the calendar system, right? And so what we're saying now is saying like one of the reasons why the calendar system is so important, right, is that one of the reasons why the calendar system is so important because it allows us to understand the spiritual influences that exist. When we talk about, when you saw the Torah portion just now, we just said that, when Abraham, when the angels come to Sarah and Abraham and say, you're going to have a kid, when they come to Abraham and say, you're going to have a kid this time next year, and Rashi brings down that it's Pesach, we have to understand there's no Pesach, there's no Jewish people at this time, right? There's no Jewish people, right? And so the whole dynamic that we are understanding now is to understand that God is telling us in the beginning with Abraham, that the idea that the Pesach, the energy of Pesach, the energy of miracles, the energies of Nisim, the whole concept exists way before the Jewish people, which means the time of Pesach, the time of holiness, this light that exists on the 15th of Nisan, the 14th or 15th of Nisan. This light exists all the way since the beginning of creation. And the Midrash Rabbah, right? And the Midrash Rabbah says that this light, right, exists all the way during the times of Adam, when Adam told his sons, Chaim and Hevel, that they should do a sacrifice. They should do a sacrifice on this day. That day was Pesach. So the light of Pesach existed before there was any Jewish people, since the beginning of creation. So what are we talking about here? We're obviously not talking about a holiday that's about people leaving Egypt. We're talking about an influence of light that goes back to the beginning of creation, when God created the universe and he created the stars and the planets and everything that's combined. That light, that system of energy that existed since the beginning of creation, which we just learned about, that system of thought existed since the beginning of creation. And that energy is the proper way for us to connect. So I want to bring this idea before we go into the main idea. You guys may have heard this idea before, but I just have to make sure that we go over it so we're on the same page. Okay. So the Midrash Rabbah says like this. It says, okay, the Midrash Rabbah says like this. It says Chamisha Shemod Nikara'u La. So it's saying that there's 5 parts of the soul. And what are these 5 parts? Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Yechida, Chaya, right? And it says Neshama Ze Adam. These are the different levels of the soul, right? And so it says Shei Na'amar, Devarim Yud Bet, and it says Ki Adam Hu Neshama. So let's just read it in English to make it quicker. So it says like this. So there's 3 parts of the soul. I mean, there's 5 parts of the soul. Every human being, every Jew, every Israelite has 5 parts to their soul in the way that we understand. And not only do we understand it, so you know that I'm not making this up, and it's not just some concept I'm saying because it sounds good, but rather this is actual pasukim inside of our Torah. So the lowest part of the soul is the level of nefesh, right? And so where do we see nefesh? It says it in Bereshis, chapter 2, verse 7. And in the next level of the soul, the level above the soul, the level of nefesh is a level of ruach. And we see ruach being used in Ezekiel 37, chapter 37, verse 13. And then we have the level of neshama. And the level of neshama is also mentioned in Bereshit chapter 2, verse 7. And you have Yechida, which is mentioned in Psalms, verse 22. I mean, chapter 22, verse 21. And then you have you have Chaya, right, which is in the chapter Psalms 143, verse 3, right? So all these names of the soul, and I'm going off of the Arizal, these are all different levels of the soul, right? And all these different levels of the soul, is this what we possess, right? And so it's so important to understand this because we're going to go to a new reality very soon. Like right now, what we're about to do, we're about to blast off into a whole new reality, but we have to accept right now you're sitting there, you're listening to me talk, and you have to say, right now, inside of this body that you have a soul. And this soul is understood in 5 different levels. And the lowest level is a level of nefesh. This is the level of the body consciousness, the body soul. But then you have a level above that called the ruach, right? And so this level of the ruach is a level that is connected to basically, if you could imagine if you could imagine, like say for example, you have you're drinking a soda. You guys have sodas in Nigeria. I know you have soda. You have Coca-Cola. You have the same things we have, right? But you have a straw, right? You have a straw. You have a soda. It's there. It's in a can. And then you have a straw, right? And then you have your mouth, right? So like say like this. All right, hold on. I got somebody else just came in. Hold on. We gotta do this thing. All right. Here we go. Okay, cool. Okay, so it's like this. So how do we understand this relationship between God's light? We're trying to understand this relationship between God's light and our soul, right? Because we're saying that we have 5 parts of a soul, right? And these 5 parts of a soul, these 5 parts of the soul are exactly, who we are, right? This is who we are. We have a physical body, but the root of who we are is the soul. So we have 5 parts of the soul, and I didn't make it up. I just didn't make this up. It says it right here. It's not even some Kabbalistic stuff. This is right here in the Midrash. The Midrash Rabbah organizes it and shows us right in the Pesukim in Deraisa that the soul has 5 different levels, and these are the 5 different names of it. It's right here in front of us. So what we're saying now is what we're trying to understand is that how does this point of the soul connect to what we were talking earlier about the calendar system and the different influences that come throughout the year, right? So we have Pesach, we have Shavuot, we have the month of Elul, we have Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, um, Sukkot, right? Hanukkah. We have all this time, right? We have all this time going on, right? And so the question is, how do these things connect to us? Are they just holidays that we're celebrating? Because we just learned that the light of Pesach existed way before there was ever a Jewish people, during the times of Abraham. And I even brought a source. I even told you even before then. So what we're saying is that the way that God designed the calendar system, that throughout the year that there's different lights, and the different lights are there to feed our soul, right? We're not there worshiping and praising like the Christians and everyone else. No, we're there. We're connecting to God. We are part of God. We are Am Israel, right? We're part of God. So when we have these holidays is where God is basically bringing light into the world. And where does that light come? It comes into our soul. It starts at the top level of our soul and it goes all the way down, right? It's a part of our whole system, right? So it's important to know, because where we're about to go now is like even more specific and more connected. So we want to come back to the original point, and we want to connect to this idea of Rachel Aminu, right? Because we want to connect, because this whole week is Rachel Aminu's week. It's not just the yard site itself, it's the whole week. It's all the way to Shabbos. The light of Rachel Aminu is this week. right? And so we want to understand, how do we connect to this great woman? How do we connect to this powerful energy that she brought into the world, right? Because when we see the angels talking to Abraham, the angels are talking to Abraham about his future life, the life beyond even his death, that how great he was going to become and how many things were going to manifest after he was died. Not just like, of course, he said you're going to have a child, you're going to do great things in his life, but the real greatness you're going to experience is going to be even after your death, right? And so this is our connection to Rachel Amenu, because Rachel Amenu had a difficult life. She meets her soulmate, right? She lives with her dad. Her dad is not a nice guy. He's a wicked person. So she lives with him, with her and her sister. And they deal with it. They endure every day. They deal with this whole thing. They have a wicked dad. He's mean to the mom, the whole thing. And they survive it. And then finally she comes and her soulmate comes. Jacob Avino, he comes into her life. Random, he just shows up out of nowhere. And now she's faced with this dilemma of her family and her soulmate. And so she understood that if she showed her sister the signs that she shared with Jacob Avinu, that she would be able to maybe have both. And so she suffered because of that. But she gave birth to two sons that changed the entire world. That changed the entire world. Yosef Hasidik and Binyamin. Binyamin was her son that she died giving birth to. So we can learn that there's women all over the world that die giving birth. We can see that there's a certain halik, there's a certain holiness connected to this idea, right? This idea of dying in birth is I'm not saying anyone should do it. God forbid anyone should know such a thing. But we were watching a person in Torah that's being clearly expressed by God Almighty through Moshe Rabbeinu about the fact of the holiness of this woman dying at birth. So God feels that that's important for us to see. So therefore, we can see the holiness in all women who struggle in during birth, right? And so this idea. So this is Rachel Amena, right? And so the idea is like this: all of us have ancestors, grandparents, great grandparents, maybe even relatives, cousins, whatever, that have passed away, right? They've transitioned to the next world. What we're about to learn is how we connect to people who've left us, people who went into the next world, because that's what Raquel Amenu, that's what Raquel Amenu, that's the whole idea of this week, is to understand, like, how do I connect to the light of Raquel Amenu? How do I connect to this holiness of Raquel Amenu? How do I do it? Right? That's what I'm trying to understand. And if I could do it by Raquel Amenu, why can't I do it by all the other righteous people? So maybe this conversation is about understanding the righteous people that existed throughout history and how do we connect to them. So this is a sefer that I recently fell in love with called Kav Ha Yahar, right? Yashar, right? So I read it Yashar as in straight, but it's really about measurements, right? And it's a sefer that was written in the 1600s. It was actually written by Ashkenaz Rabbi, who's obviously a very brilliant person, Rabbi Svi Hertz, and so he wrote this sefer, and it has a lot of amazing points in it. But it connects directly. I found a chapter 71, that connects directly to what we're talking about here. It's going to allow us to elevate to a new level. So we got to go through this chapter. It's very high level. It's an energy connection. Well, we got to go through it, right? And what we're going to understand now, going through this chapter, is how we got to the point where we understand this as being a part of the Jewish people, that we connect to the death anniversary of someone's life. Okay, so it starts off like this. So it says Ve'avo ad Hebron. So it says, and he went up to Hebron. So Hebron is a city here in Israel, one of my favorite cities, by the way. And it has a place called Marzeh Pelach, the cave of the patriarchs. and it's where Abraham is buried, and Sarah is buried, and Isaac and Rebecca are buried, and Leah and Jacob are buried, and even Adam and Eve are buried here, right? And so I just messed up. And so wait, hold on one second. I gotta bring it back. Hold on. Okay, so it's a place that he's buried there, right? So what happens is the next verse says, it says Uferesh Rashi. So Rashi comments and he says, Malmed Shei Chalech Chalev Ad Kever Kevri. It says Kevri Ha'ovot. And he says Le and it says Le Hit Pelel Shem. So it says, and so Rashi says, so this is a verse that talks about this verse when it says Ve'avo ad Hebron is talking about when the spies go into the land of Israel. I don't know if you guys remember this, but the spies go into the land of Israel, and Moses says, "Go and check it out." And the spies came back with bad reports. All the spies except for two. Yehoshua ben Nun and Caleb. So when the Torah says Ve'avo ad Hebron, it's talking about Caleb going into Hebron. And so Rashi brings a tradition that goes all the way from Mount Sinai that says that what happened is that Malmed Shechalek Caleb ad Kevri Avot. So when he went there, he went to the Kever, the gravesite of the Avot. He went to the grave sites, right? So let's read in the English to speed it up. So he says, so he went to the cave of the patriarchs, and he went there and he elevated, and he went to a higher level than the other spies, and that helped him give a good report. But it says, based on this incident, there has been, then it spread throughout Israel, the people of Israel, the worthy custom of visiting a grave of one's forebearer on the anniversary of their death. So they're saying because of this whole experience that Caleb had during the times of the spies, that has been a tradition within the Jewish people, that people would go and visit the grave sites of their ancestors. And it says, and if one is not in the vicinity of a grave at the time of a yard site. So what is a yard site? So we just learned by Abraham that he said, the angel said, I'm going to come back exactly a year from this day, and you're going to have a baby. So now we understand that there's a connection between the day you say something and that same exact day you say something and you're returning on that same exact day. So it's the same thing when people die. The day that a person passes away, that every positive thing that they did in their lifetime, when their soul transitions, everything that they did positive, even if they did one positive act or two positive acts or maybe millions of positive acts, it doesn't matter. The energy of positivity that they created through that action stays in this world. Even though their soul elevates, the positive energy stays into this world. And that's what they're speaking about right here, right? And so they're saying, so on this day of a person's transition, there's a certain energy. So there's this concept called a yard site, right? Or a death anniversary celebration, right? You guys may have that in your culture, right? And so on the day a person dies on the Hebrew calendar, on that day, we celebrate it, we celebrate their life, we say good things, we bring people together, we do mitzvot, we do all these things, because all of these elements of work affect the person in the heavens, right? They affect the judgment, because every year we're judged. So it says like this. So what happens is that even if you can't go to the exact gravesite of that person, if you go to any Jewish gravesite, you're going to bring you're going to connect to the souls there, and then the souls there are connected to all the souls. So if you go to one place, you're going to connect to all the other ones, right? So all the souls in the Gan Eden will be aroused, because the entire earth is a single unit. It says, for the Holy One, blessed be he, has decreed for Israel's sake that the nephesh, which is the lowest part of the soul, of the righteous person should remain in the caver, right? So God creates a system like this. We have 5 parts of the soul. they function. We receive light every day. Right now, we're learning Torah. We're receiving light, right? And so what we're saying is that the light force of God comes into this world and it goes through our soul. And through our soul, it goes to the body. It goes to the whole thing. Hold on. Let me see if I can fix this. Hold on 1 second. Someone else just joined in. Boom. Okay, sweet. Okay, great. So the point is like this. So the point is saying that everybody has a soul. There's 5 parts. There's 5 parts. Everyone has a soul. And the whole name of the game is that the mitzvot and everything that we do is connecting our soul to God's light, right? We talked about it last week, this whole thing, but we're building for it. So what we're saying now is that we're understanding that when a person leaves this world, when a person, quote unquote, dies, what happens to these 5 parts of the soul, right? And so what we learn is that the lowest part of the soul, the nefesh, stays inside of the body. It stays inside of the body, right? And he says, and this is, and listen to this. Why does it stay inside of the body? It stays in the body in order that people who come and pray at the gravesite, their supplications, their prayers can be received by the person in the gravesite. The person in the gravesite receives the sorrows, of this person. So say you feel sadness, you miss this person, the whole thing. So you go to the person's gravesite and you say, you have sadness, you speak to them, you speak to God about your sadness. And so that sadness that you have, it gets swallowed up. It gets swallowed up by the grave itself, by the person you're going to, because they have a nefesh there. And so that nefesh receives it. And so that nefesh receiving that sorrow, what happens? That nefesh takes that sorrow that it receives, and now it transcends it to the place of ruach, right? It goes up to the place of ruach, right? Because we got 5 levels of the soul. So what is this ruach? The ruach is in the lower level of the Garden of Eden. So in the next world, our soul gets broken up into different parts. Now it's all in our body. But in the next world, it goes into different parts. So the lowest part of our soul stays in our body. The second part of our soul goes into the heavens, right? It goes into the heavens, but the lower heavens, that's the ruach. And so what happens? So the ruach receives the sorrow from the nefesh, and then so what happens is that the nefesh, the ruach, now goes to the higher heavens. In the higher heavens is where your neshama is with millions of other neshamot of holy people who lived throughout history that also passed away, and the souls are up in the heavens, right? Hold on. Their souls are their souls are in the heaven, right? Their souls are also in the heavens. So what happens is you feel sadness, right? You feel a sadness. Someone in your life you love so much, you miss them. And then you go to their gravesite and you talk about the missing and the sadness and all the difficulties that you're dealing with in life. And then when you go to that gravesite, there's an aspect of the soul, because there's 5 parts of the soul that we have inside of us right now. But but those 5 parts of the soul are broken up into 5 parts when we die. And the lowest part of the soul, which is the nefesh, is inside of the body. And so when we feel sadness and we go to the gravesite and we read Tehillim, we say things that hurt our hearts, things that were difficulties, the soul, the nefesh part of the soul that's still inside of the body in the grave, takes that sadness and then elevates it to the other part of our soul, which is the ruach. The ruach is there's 2 levels of heaven, right? And the lowest part of heaven is where the ruach is. So the ruach receives this information in Gan Eden, and then it takes that information to the higher level, which is the level of the heavens where the neshama is, right? Because the 5 parts are the nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yikida. But in this context, we're only talking about these 3 parts. So it takes this dynamic and it elevates it all the way to the level of where all the souls in the heavens are at. And so all of the souls that are in the heavens start to pray. So imagine like you have a ruach, Your nefesh receives the sadness. It says it sends it up to the heavens in a ballistic missile to the heavens, the lower heavens, and the ruach receives this missile or this sorrow, and it takes this sorrow and it takes it up to a higher heaven, which is the world of souls of neshama, right? Where you're neshama, but other neshamas are there too, and it says, hey, so and so is really hurt and they're really sad and they really need help and they need tefillah, they need Hashem to change the decree, they need Hashem to help. And so all the souls in this upper heaven starts to pray for the soul that is down here in front of the gravesite, right? And so that's the dynamic, right? And so we're going to keep going. It says, however, if the neshama did not merit the upper Gan Eden, so this is the issue now. So the issue now is saying, so we heard about how the system works. A person passes away who's righteous. Someone goes to their gravesite and they have sadness. The righteous person, their nefesh is still there. They receive that sadness. That sadness goes all the way up to the world in the heavens, from the ground all the way to the heavens. And in the heavens, it goes to the ruach, and the ruach takes that information of sadness and goes to the higher heavens where the levels of the neshama is. But the neshama is not by itself. It's with millions of neshamot, and those millions of neshamot all hear the grievance that the ruach is telling your neshama. And so all of them collectively decide to pray for you in the heavens for God. And so now we're saying, but if a person doesn't live righteously, what happens if a person doesn't live righteous? What happens? Their soul is not inside of that inner place where they're all praying, where all the holy souls are at. They're not in there. They're on the outside, right? And basically they're wandering around, right? So the whole system of having your neshama, your nefesh, still in your body after you die, having your ruach in the heavens, and having your neshama in the heavens, this is only because you were a righteous person while you lived. If you did not live righteous, your soul does not have this access. Your soul is on the outside. Look what it says. He says, however, if the neshama didn't merit the upper Gan Eden, but remains on the outside of the holy partitions, it wanders back and forth. And not only does the neshama work back and forth, the ruach and the nefesh are also condemned to wander to and from. So if you don't live this righteous life in the next world, your soul is just wandering. And every time they enter the grave, and behold, the body is covered in worms. So even in those souls, they have nowhere to go. They're just lost. They're not in the heavenly courts with the righteous. They're not in the neshama is not protected. I mean, the body's not protected because there's no nefesh inside of it. Your soul is not in that lower heavens. The ruach is not in the lower heavens, so it's wandering. Your neshama is not in the world of nashamot, in the upper heavens. It's wandering. So all these people, and then what do? They get so panicked. They try to come back in the body and say, maybe we could just come back in the body and fix it. But when they try to come back to the body itself, it says, listen to this. And every time they try to enter the grave, they try to go back. Behold, the bodies is covered with worms, and the mouth and swarming with worms, and the intestines are filled with maggots and worms. And then the neshama mourns, and so they bring a verse from. They bring a verse, and the verse says, "And his soul will mourn over him." And he says it's talking about, but none of this is the case for a body that's pure. So if we live a righteous life, if we live a holy life, what happens when we live a holy life? Listen to this. You're not going to believe what you're about to hear right now, okay? What you're about to hear is going to blow your mind if you really accept it. So he says like this. Then he says, if you live a holy life and your body is pure, meaning you're not out committing sins, destroying your body, destroying your soul, he says, then the disintegration of the flesh is affected by the soil alone. There's no maggots, there's no worms, there's only the soil. It's the connection between your body and the soil. And it immediately turns to dust and ashes, without enduring any agony caused by the worms and the maggots. This is the reward of the body. as the reward of the neshama, it immediately ascends to the upper heavens. The neshama ascends to the upper heavens, and while the ruach ascends to the lower heavens. So it's exactly what we're saying. So the physical body, when you live a righteous life, even after you're dead, is protected because the nefesh is in there, but it goes deeper. So it says, V'chal Shabbat, woo, Shabbat, and all the Shabbat, Ve Rosh Chodesh, and Rosh Chodesh, Ola, Le Ruach, Le Gan Eden. All the Ruachs are in Gan Eden. Ha Elion, and he says, and he says, so it says all the, we'll just read it in English, just do it fast, right? So it says, every soul, every Shabbat, in every Rosh Chodesh, the Ruach, so this is the person that already has passed away, right? The Ruach ascends to the upper Gan Eden, where it receives an illumination and a pure radiance of the Neshama. So we understand that the highest heaven is where the Neshama is, right? You have the Nefesh that's still in the body. You have the Ruach that's in the lower aspect of the soul. I mean, the lower aspect of the heavens, and you have the Neshama, which are in the higher aspect. But they're saying on Shabbat and on Rosh Chodesh, all the aspect of the Ruach, it goes all the way up to the highest heavens. It's no longer in the lower heavens. It just goes up to the higher heavens with pure radiance. And it says, and with this, it descends to a place at the conclusion of the day, right? So during these days, there's a conclusion of the day, right? And it says, afterward, towards the end of the day, the nefesh, it also ascends and receives the same illumination that was brought by the ruach from the shama. So it even goes up to, it leaves the body. Even the nefesh, when a person on Shabbat and Yom Tov, there's no need to visit, you can't visit the dead. Why? Because there's no nefesh there. There's nothing to connect to. Everything's going up to the heavens. So when the nefesh descends and enters the grave, where it takes an image. Listen, this is crazy. Listen to what he's saying. He's saying the body, we just learned earlier, that if a body is pure, right? It just says, it's right here before. Let's look at this. He says, if a body is pure, then the disintegration of the flesh is affected by the soil alone. And it immediately turns into dust and ashes, right? Without enduring any of the agony caused by the worms and the maggots. He says, this is the reward of the body. For the reward of the neshama is that it immediately ascends. This is a person who lives a pure life. The reward for your neshama, right? Because we have 5 parts of the soul. We're only talking about 3 right now. But the neshama goes to the higher heavens. And your ruach ascends to the lower heavens. So over here, it says like this. It says that at the end, so he says, but every Rosh Chodesh and every Shabbat, the soul goes up to the heavens and it gets totally purified, right? He says, but this is the thing. Because the body was pure and because it was holy, it completely disintegrated. There's no body there. So listen to this. It says, then the nefesh descends and enters the grave where it takes the image of a body as it was when it was alive in this world, and through it is clothed itself in a body precisely as it was as a person that was alive. So now we understand the secret to Mechaye Hamitim, the resurrection of the dead. Because all the people who are going to be resurrection are pure, are holy people that lived in other generations. So how could they come back into this world as human beings? They're in the ground, they're dead. This guy was in the war, this guy died, this guy lost his arm, this guy lost his leg. How is they coming back? We just learned the secret right here. This is a secret. People, billions of people on planet Earth, they'll never learn the secret. We just learned right here. And what is the secret? The secret is that the body that's holy disintegrates and connects to the soil. But the nefesh is still inside of the gravesite. It's still there amongst the dust, amongst the ashes. And so that nefesh goes up every Shabbat. every Rosh Chodesh, and it goes up to the heavens and it gets renewed. But when it comes back into the grave, it's in the image of the body. It's in the image of the person. The nefesh itself becomes a person that that looks like a physical living person. Listen to what it says. And it says, precisely as the person was alive. In this manner, the righteous stand upon their graves. So they're saying, if we could really see, we could see that the righteous people, in looking like they did when they were teenagers, are literally standing on their grave, uttering words of praise and acknowledgments to God. May his name be blessed for the lofty illumination of the neshama. Their faces radiate with the great illumination. Right? You remember when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, his face was illuminating? At the time, they sing songs and praises precisely as they originally appeared in their bones. So the same way that they were when they were alive, these same souls are these same souls are they're in essence, their nefesh reincarnates them to their, when they were teenagers, when they were dressed perfectly, they were at their most healthiest, and they were knitted together, and the flesh is like the fleshed out like a actual body. And it says, if the living, it says, so this is talking about us. If the living were allowed to perceive them, they would see that at the conclusion of every Shabbat and every Rosh Chodesh and in Yom Tov, in bodily form, standing upon their graves, reciting songs and praises. So the souls go up during the beginning of Shabbat and the beginning of Rosh Chodesh and the beginning of Yom Tov, but on the way, towards the end, they come back. And when they come back, they're standing on their grave sites and they're singing songs and praises. This is the meaning of the verse. All of my bones I will declare, Hashem, who is like you. It says this in Tehillim, chapter 35, verse 10. He says, note that it is not stated that they say, but that they say, but they will say. So he says the verse doesn't say that they say that they're going to say, but they will say. This is an allusion to the reciting of the psalms and the praises that the dead do at the conclusion of every Rosh Chodesh and Yom Tov and Yom Tov and Rosh Chodesh. So we're going to go a little bit more. We're going to keep going. We'll be done soon. So it says like this, and he says, this is a tradition that has been passed down through writings and texts in earlier generations, that while even a person is still alive, the neshama is aroused. So this is a very big point. Okay, some of you guys in this group, you may be psychic, you may be able to feel things, you may be able to have feelings and know good things are going to happen or bad things are going to happen. If you're one of those people, this is for you. Okay, because this is all connected, and we're just learning about the inner essence of self, because we want to connect to the light of Rachel Amenu. We want to connect to the essence of Rachel Amenu through this whole week, and we want to understand the power of who she is and how to connect to it. So we have to understand her soul, because the same way her soul functions, the same way our soul functions, is the same way that the soul functions in us. So it says, it has also been passed down to us through the writings that while a person is alive, while you're alive, right, we have all 5 parts of our soul inside of us, that the neshama arouses his heart regarding the words of Hashem. So sometimes when you have emotions, it's coming from the neshama. So he says, you should know that whenever a good thought suddenly enters a person's heart, such as joy over or love of the words of Torah or a commandment, it is a favorable time to pray. So whenever you feel inspiration, you just like, you know what? Like there's a famous song, I feel good. Da, na, 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 na. When you feel good, it's saying here, you should pray, right? It's a good time to pray. And he says in the prayer that one utters at this time will immediately enter the palace of the King of the Kings, and the Holy One, blessed be he. And he says, and if on occasion a person experiences, so but on the flip side, on the other side, if sometimes you feel a darkness, you feel judgment, you feel a heaviness, you feel a bad feeling, he said it's very likely that some evil decree has been issued against that person God forbid, or a member of their family, or the entire world. In most cases, when the decrees are issued, there's a messenger that is dispatched from the heavens that comes and arouses the heart. And for a person's heart knows the bitterness of its soul. So when your soul feels a bitterness, you feel it in the you, so when your heart feels a bitterness, you feel it in your soul. And even if this does not, even if he does not hear anything, like you don't hear like some message from the heavens or whatever, in your soul you just have this bad feeling. He says, so therefore, if a person is lazy and fails to pray, immediately the decree becomes reality. So there's two. So one scenario is when we have this inspiration for no reason that comes into our life. We got to pray. We got to jump up and we got to pray immediately because it's something from the heavens. And the same way on the flip side, when we have this negative feeling inside of us, inside of our soul, we got to pray immediately too because that's a sign that there's an evil decree, right? And so what I'm going to read to you now is a story about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and we're going to be almost done on this, okay? So we're just going to push it through. And he says like this. He says, for this reason, let him arouse himself to the best of his abilities to pray with tears before the Holy One, blessed be he. So when this happens, when you feel this thing, whether it's a complete joy or it's complete sadness, you got to jump up for fear. You got to, you got to jump up and you got to cry. You got to put your heart into it. It's much easier for women to do this than men, but you got to do this, right? And so this is elaborated in the Zohar, right? In the Vayikra, right? And so it tells a story like this. Okay, and I'm going to speed through the story. So Rabbi Shimon, he's sitting at the gates at the gate of Lod. Lod is a town here, like in the northern part of Israel, if I'm correct. And it's nice. I don't know if I've spent time there, but it exists or I heard of it. It's more the northern part. I'm here in Jerusalem. So it says, then a light became blocked. So the sun's out and the light became blocked. After which the light came out again, and then it was blocked again. And then again, the light came out and it was blocked. And this happened 3 times. He says, meanwhile, the light dimmed and the sun became black and green. And so it said, oh, is that like the Nigerian flag? No, that's white and green. Okay, so it says, and so it says black and green. And so he says, and Rabbi Shimon said to his son, Rabbi Eliezer, follow me and let us see what this means. Surely an evil decree has issued, and the Holy One, blessed be he, desires to inform us. So he saw this whole thing happening with the sun going in and out and the lights and the whole thing. He said, you know what? This is a message from God. And he says, for whenever a decree is issued on high, it is suspended for 3 days until the Holy One, blessed be he, informs the righteous. And he said, because the verse says in Amos, it says, for Hashem, God does not do anything without revealing its secret to his servants, the prophets. So the prophets would always get messages about what God was going to do before he did it. That's why we have Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Isaiah and all these people. They were warning the Jewish people because the decree was already in heaven. But God wouldn't just create a decree and not tell us. No, he had to tell us. So what did he do? He had the prophets. But here, Rabbi Shimon is seeing it for himself. And he says, and while they were walking, they entered a vineyard, right? You know what a vineyard is. They walked into the vineyard and they saw a snake, and the snake was coming to them. And he grabbed the snake because they grabbed the snake, and Rabbi Shimon grabbed the snake by his head, and he saw that the snake was talking, right? Snake is talking. And the snake is basically saying that it was muttering, and it was saying how it was connected to the ultimate snake, right? The Nachash from the beginning of creation, that was had power over all the snakes, all the serpents, right? And it goes even more connected than that. I'm not going to go into it because it's nighttime and you don't want to say certain names. So anyway, so Rabbi Shimon grabs this snake, and he says to the snake, he says, and tell me, he says, and tell the one he grabs a snake, and he says, tell the one who's a supernatural snake that Rabbi Shimon is in this world. And then he took the head of the snake and he put it into a hole in the ground, and he says, I decree by the divine name of God that this earthly snake shall return to its hole, to the ground, and so shall the supernatural snake go back to its hole. So he's talking about the judgment. And so afterwards, Rabbi Shimon and his son Rabbi Eliezer, they prayed softly. And while they were praying, they heard the voices say from the heavens. He says, the decree, he told all, he says, oh heralds of the decree, return to your place, for the gang of thugs is not to dwell in the world, because Rabbi Shimon has annulled the decree. Basically, what happened is that the heavenly voice told the agents appointed by God to bring calamity to the world. That's what he saw. Rabbi Shimon saw it with his son. He saw that. But because what Rabbi Shimon did, that the order and the voice from the heavens told all these judgment people to go back into their dwelling place in the desert, because Rabbi Shimon protected the world. So what is the point? So we're going to learn this. So he says, know further that even though we don't have Rabbi Shimon in our generation, we don't have the great tzaddik like a Rabbi Shimon who wrote the Zohar, who was a Tana. He says, who was able to annul evil decrees. Nevertheless, Hashem's mercy extends to every generation. And therefore, because we don't have a Rabbi Shimon, he says the decrees made on high, so that God still spares us through emissaries, are immediately dispatched to reveal. So now God doesn't have Rabbi Shimon, but he says the information through the mouths of little boys and little girls who have prophecy. So sometimes little kids have prophecy. And it says the Holy One, blessed be, also arouses the hearts of the people who are upright, people like us, people who keep Shabbat, people who learn Torah, people who fear Hashem. He gives us messages as well. And the God-fearing who pray, the people who just pray, maybe they're not so righteous, but they pray, they do their best. On behalf of the generation, this arousal comes to them from within. So you have these feelings within that come within you. And the moment the moment some evil is stirred up, angels of the judgment go about proclaiming it, and the arrows of judgment are dispersed from the heavens, bringing ill effects to the world. And may we all be spared. But at such time, a person should try to minimize his time. So they're saying when decrees come into the world, don't be outside. Okay, don't be outside, right? He says, at such time, a person should not try to minimize their time that they spend outdoors. But the Zohar warns in Parsha Noach, when the license is granted to the destroyer for the negative force, its agents have permission to strike those who are found walking the streets and the markets. Heaven forbid. Therefore, one should pray to be delivered from all evil, as we have mentioned above. So when you feel this feeling, so you don't have to deal with the judgment, you got to do it. We're almost done. Okay, we're almost just like the last section. A person should also refrain from mentioning his name. So when you're praying, don't mention your name. Why? He said, because there's an accuser in the heavenly court that if he hears your name, he may come and judge you. And they use the example of Prophet Elisha, right? And Prophet Elisha says, he brings a proof from Prophet Elisha, and he says, do you have need to spoken of the king? So I guess this refers to the Holy One, blessed be he. On the day that Elisha spoke to the Skina was Rosh Hashanah. And the Holy One, blessed be he, called the Holy King on the Day of Judgment. So he's speaking in this time of Rosh Hashanah, right? Which is a time of judgment, as we know, right? And he's speaking to the Creator, right? He says, but here's the proof. The proof that you should not mention your name while you're praying is through the Parsha Noach. When Noach's name was not mentioned, but once the judgment was over. And God remembered Noach. That's what it says first. That is, only then did God brings Noach's name to mind. From here, we learn that a person is judged on a balanced scale. For every good deed creates a defender, and for every bad deed creates an accuser. So the thing is like this. So we're in this world of creating angels. When we go and do things against God, against the Torah, we create a negative angel that has a decree against us. And not just us, our family, and even the community, and even the whole world through our actions. When we do a right action, we create a defender, a person who defends us for negative actions. And God forbid we have any, but a defender, right? Who protects us and say, God, no, this person is great. They're elevating this whole thing, right? And this is us at the end. It says, fortunate is the one who loves his soul more than his body, who treats the world as a secondary to this world. So let's listen to this. Fortunate is the one who loves his soul more than his body. What does that mean? That means that the body can be convinced that we live in a world of pleasure, right? So go do this, go and hang out with the guys, go and chill, go and have fun, hook up, kiss, hug, all these things, right? This is what the world tells us. You listen to music, every verse is going against the Torah, right? Every verse. But the Torah, but the sages are teaching right here that a person who loves their soul more than their body. So what does that mean? That means that even though I could do this action that does bring me immediate pleasure, but destroy my soul, right? Because when we go outside of the Torah and we're dealing with guys and these and all these different things, we're damaging our souls, right? So when we go against and do the things that the body may enjoy, we're damaging our soul. We're making ourselves impure and more impure for our soulmate and for our children and for our family, right? So the short-term pleasure is not helping us build the happiness that we want long-term, right? This guy, he's not committed to me. He hasn't dedicated. He hasn't bought me a ring. He hasn't said he's going to provide for me. He's going to protect me. But yeah, we're hanging out. We're having fun. But that fun that we're having is damaging my soul. So this is what it is saying here. Fortunate to the ones who love their soul more than their body. Listen, and it says who treats the world secondary to the world to come. This world that we live in, as the sages teach, is just a vehicle to the next world, right? When you get inside of a car, the car is just a vehicle to get you to another destination. This world that we live in is only a vehicle. It's only a vehicle to another destination, which is the world to come. So we do as many mitzvahs as we can do here, right? We do as many mitzvahs that we could do here. We do it as much as we can. Why do we do it? Because we want to build something for the next world too, right? We said in the beginning of this conversation, the angels came to Abraham Avinu and they told him about a world past his life. Rachel Amenu, past her life. Her greatness, Yosef Asadic saved the entire planet Earth. Every human being, all the living creatures, everything survived because of Yosef Asadic. But Rachel never saw that. She never saw it. Am Israel standing on Mount Sinai, testifying in front of the whole world that God is king. That all things, Am Israel, Abraham never saw it. But that was the bracha that Hashem gave to Abraham. So we're saying, how do we connect to Rachel Amenu? How do we connect to Rachel Amenu? We connect to Rachel Amenu when we accept that we're going to live a life beyond the physical pleasure, beyond this world, beyond the days that we live every day. And we're going to live for this world and the next world. For the world that we're not going to participate in, the world that we're not going to be alive for. We're going to do things that affect that world. On Rosh Hashanah, it says that the dead, the living are judged and so are the dead. And so they ask the question, how could the dead be judged? They're not alive. They did no averas. They did no mitzvahs. How could they be judged? They said, because we're judged based off of the things that we leave in this world. We're judged by the things that we leave in this world, whether it's a business, whether it's children, whether it's an organization, whether it's relationships, whatever it is, whatever effect we created in this world, there's a response. And so that response is what we're judged by. So Rachel Amenu, she wasn't there for her children, but guess what? But she was there for her sister. And she showed modesty. And she showed derech eretz. And so she did these things. And so by doing these things, she changed her DNA. She changed her structure. So most of you guys don't have children, I can imagine. So all the mitzvahs that you do are the mitzvahs that your children are going to do. And God forbid the Averas that you committed could be the Averas that they committed. And the reason why Yosef Hasadik was successful is because he had the strength of his mother in his DNA, even though she wasn't there. So the bracha to everybody in the Shiur, in the world, everyone in Nigeria, all the Igbo people, all the other tribes that are also Israelites in the west of Africa, all the tribes in Africa as a whole, all the African Americans who are descendants of the Igbos in the other tribes in the west of Africa are also connected. We should all understand that we have a greater mission in this world than what society has given us, more than what the college, the universities, all that has given us. And that world is a world that the things that we do affect the world to come. The things that we do affect angels, and the things that we do affect the descendants that come from us. And so we should all have the strength. We should all have that. We should all have the strength. We should all have the strength to just go on this journey and to continue on this process of, of understanding who we are, understanding what we are supposed to accomplish in this world, and have success. So if anybody have anything to say on it, any ideas, any thoughts on this, and we could finish up this year. Any ideas? Okay. Okay. So anyways, thank you for everybody who came out for this year. We're going to be doing it next week, but we'll be back on Sunday as we were last week. And we're going to continue on with the weekly Parsha. I think we're getting close to some very, very, very high level Parshiot inside the Torah. And I just, I appreciate this opportunity. I like to thank everybody who put together this year with the women's group in Nigeria and by the Igbo people. And we should continue on and continue to have success. Baruch atah.